Go live. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just a moment. Hello. Welcome, everyone. All right, it's 7 o'clock, and I'm just going to give some quick announcements. I'm Anissa. I'm your librarian tonight. I work at San Francisco Public Library. I get to host and promote amazing humans, so I love my job most of the time. I just now put, if you've ever done an event with me, I have a running doc for every event. So as resources and books come up, we'll add them, but also the links to any upcoming events, as well as links to tonight's authors. All right, so we are here for another third year in a row of celebrating Filipino American History Month, curated by Barbara Jane Reyes, and she always brings the most amazing and fierce writers. I am so happy that she agrees for the third year to be with us. We would like to acknowledge that we occupy the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland, and as uninvited guests, we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples and wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community. And if you've ever heard of Curated Land Trust or not, you should check them out. They are an all women-led, Oakland-based land back movement organization, and they just successfully secured some land back from the city of Oakland. The first, I found this, I don't know about this fact, but the first city in California to return land back. I don't know, but anyway, it has happened and it's great news. Upcoming events we have for the sixth Filipino American International Book Festival, and it's returning finally in person at our library. 2 full days, stacked events, like stacked, not just for adults, but children's events too. The most amazing writers. There's also going to be a marketplace, and Sunday, the amazing Maria Ressa will be, it'll be a streaming talk that she does, and don't miss it. It's going to be great. And I'll put in the chat the link to the book fest, because the lineup and the schedule are mind-blowing. So please come check that out. We're going to be lots of spreading out all over the library so we can gather, bring your masks, and we'll have a nice gathering. It's nice to be back in person. Part of Litquake and Alta Journal, the library has a bi-monthly book selection where we encourage all of San Francisco to read the same book at the same time. And it's called On the Same Page. It's also a drinking game we do at the library. Anytime someone says on the same page, gotta do a shot. And Mr. Roberto Lovato will be in conversation with Vanessa Hua Saturday, October 22nd, 2 p.m. on this beautiful 6th floor Soriano gallery. October 23rd, there's 23 people on this lineup so far. 23rd, 23 people. How to live creatively while BIPOC. And if you don't know Shizaway Siegel, she is just a powerhouse in the Bay Area, and she just has this way of bringing amazing creatives together. So do not miss this. Artists, writers, performers, it's gonna be amazing. And Sunday's great at the library because the farmers market is the same day. One City, One Book, it's finally here, our biggest literary event of the year, where we celebrate, we encourage everybody to read this book in the Bay Area. This is Ear Hustle, unflinching stories from everyday prison life. Nigel Poor and Earlonne Woods, they are amazing. The book is really powerful. The podcast is really powerful. And they will be in conversation with Piper Kerman, Thursday, November 3rd, 6:30. And I'm going to breeze through. The amazing thing about this campaign is we get a really nice budget from our friends of the San Francisco Public Library that allow us to do 2 months of programming aligned with the book. So we have some amazing authors coming. Sarah Cruzan, who wrote the book, she was convicted for killing her abductor and her rapist and her violator. Kristen Henning and Reginald Dwayne Betts. Dwayne Betts is very well-known poet, but also formerly incarcerated. And amazing organizations, art, how art transforms the lives of incarcerated. Damien Lanai, just for a quick instance, he worked in the library prison, self-taught artist while inside, got out, got his librarian degree, and now he's getting his PhD. So art definitely transforms lives. Come check it out. And then tons of organizations who are working either inside for incarcerated folks or in the reentry fields. And all of this is sponsored by our friends of the San Francisco Public Library. All right, now we're going to jump into tonight's event, and I'm super excited to have these amazing women here tonight. And this is a night of Pinay womanist writers reading from their latest works. Love it. So tonight we have Danni Quintos, Barbara Jane Reyes, Jen Soriano, and Isabel Yap. And I'm going to read their bios. And I already see there's a hand raised, which is awesome. We're going to have some time for Q&A at the end. And like I said, I put this link in here of tonight's doc, and I will add as we go along, and we'll give some time for Q&A. Danni Quintos is the author of the poetry collection Two Brown Dots. She's the winner of the Poulin Jr. Prize and Python, an ekphrastic chapbook featuring photography by her sister, Shelli Quintos. She's a Kentuckian, a knitter, an educator, an Affrilachian poet. She received her BA from the Evergreen State College and her MFA in poetry from Indiana University. Her work has appeared in Poetry Magazine, Cream City Review, Cincinnati Review, The Margins, Best Poets 2015, Salon, and elsewhere. Quintos lives in Lexington with her kid, farmer spouse, and their little dog, too. Barbara Jane Reyes was born in Manila, Philippines, raised in San Francisco. She is the author of Gravities of Center, Poeta in San Francisco, Diwata, To Love as Aswang, Invocation to Daughters, Letters to Young Brown Girl, and Wanna Peek into My Notebook, Notes on Pinay Liminality. And I really can't wait to check that one out from the library. Reyes is also the author of 3 chapbooks, For the City That Nearly Broke Me, Cherry, and Easter Sunday. She received a BA in Ethnic Studies at UC Berkeley, her MFA at San Francisco State, and she teaches in the Chingo Philippine Studies program at University of San Francisco. She lives with her husband, poet and educator, Oscar Bermo, in Oakland. Jen Soriano is a writer, performer, social movement strategist, and author of the chapbook, Making the Tongue Dry. She's also co-editor of The Closer Liberation, a Pinay activism anthology spearheaded by Dr. Amanda Amoraro and DJ Kutin Kandi. Her first full-length book, Nervous, a collection of personal essays about healing, the history we carry in our bodies, is forthcoming from Amistad HarperCollins in 2023. Yay! Soriano writes about buried stories that long for air and the space to shine. Her work has received the Penelope Neven Prize for Fuji Prose Prize and the Fuji Prose Prize, as well as fellowships from Vermont Studio Center, Hugo House, and the Jack Jones Literary Arts Retreat. Originally from a landlocked area in Southwest Chicago, she now lives with her partner, 8-year-old son, and tween-aged water dog on the Duwamish territory of Seattle near Salish Sea. She wants you to know that even if you've already eaten, it's probably time to eat again. I like it. And then finally, and without, what is it? Last but not least, Isabel Yap is a Filipino writer of speculative fiction and poetry. Occasionally, she does freelance editing and copywriting. She's also a product manager with a background primarily in startups and mobile apps. She enjoys collaborating with technical terms to solve problems for users. She uses empathy and curiosity in both career paths. I like that too. Yap's debut short story collection, Never Have I Ever, is out now from Small Bear Press. All right, and I'm going to turn it over. We're going to go in alphabetical order. So, spotlight on Danni.
Okay, I'm unmuted, yes. Let's see. All right. So thank you all so much. Thank you, San Francisco Public Library and Anissa, and Barbara Jane. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this reading. I'm so excited to share space with other Pinay writers. It's such like a rare and special thing, especially for me in Kentucky, where I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, I think there were 2 Asian American students in my graduating high school class. So needless to say, it's really nice to be with other celebrating Philam History Month and sharing space with you all. So, all right. So I'm gonna read a couple teenage poems or tweenage poems from the first part of my book, which is very, very tween. So the first section of my book is girlhood. So I thought I would start it off with something that I hope you think is funny. I was told this is funny, so this is age 11. A creaky fold-out sofa with copper flowers at mom's new old house is the new old bed I share with my sleeping sister, while our pet hedgehog runs away, and for months she scratches in the walls, survives on crickets and roly-polies until she returns, lured by a peanut butter in a cage trap. Metal door snaps shut while I am belly down in a closet clubhouse, flashlight reading the CD booklet to Jagged Little Pill, memorizing lyrics like, I'm brave, but I'm chicken shit, like, would she go down on you in a theater? I don't know what these words mean, but the feeling of reading cuss words in the dark and the nettled burn of Alanis's voice gives me some kind of power, and mom lets me sing these cusses so long as I promise only at home where it's safe. At school, I'm the girl wearing weird outfits, a blue daisy mini dress over jeans, and everyone talks about me behind their palms. A girl with blonde straight hair asks me where I got it, smiling mean right into my face. And when I dress up like Michael Jackson for a group project about the 80s, one sparkly glove and PC hair pulled back in a ponytail, crotch grabbing myself in high-pitched voice, I don't break character. I am shameless, the funny girl who didn't get invited to Courtney's freak dancing party, but I do sleep over at my best friend's, where we empty her caboodle of eyeshadows and pencils on her bed, smear colors on our eyes, practicing for middle school. I make her watch the Dirty Dancing tape I snuck in my pillowcase and tell her they do it 3 times. And with the volume down, we see how Baby gets put in a corner and Patrick Swayze, glazed with sweat and lake water, twisting his shiny muscles to the music. She'll tell her mom the next morning at breakfast, crying. She'll say they did it 3 times. We play the game we call What If while we fall asleep, whispering into each other's hair. What if Duke Prather asked you to prom and gave you his Letterman's jacket? Everything that happened to the twins in Sweet Valley, we want to happen to us. What if Jack Ulrich gave you a flower unlike any other in the world? Picture the rose from Beauty and the Beast, withering under a glass dome. We imagine these boys have been hiding in the air vents the whole time, watching us slip bras off our boyish chests. They elbow each other out of the way for the best view, their faces striped with light, obsessed as we are. Okay, I'm gonna read one more girlhood poem. This one is called 6th Grade Invisibility Studies. Somehow my new blue jean flares became high waters, and everyone could see my babyish purple socks. My glasses got crooked on my face, my hips spread wide, and I started to bleed through my pants unpredictably. This is when I tried to erase myself, pushed my limp hair in front of my eyes to become invisible. A boy in art class called me the N-word and smiled. I wanted to disappear and steal his backpack, dump it out the window, math book and pencils spilling in the courtyard where only birds could get in. In orchestra class, my bow sawed the wrong way during the Moonlight Sonata, my notes too flat or too sharp. The teacher made me play alone. Imagine a violin floating in the air, squeaking. I got caught passing a note in social studies, triangle folded and flicked across a table. I was made an example of, a 500-word essay that no one wanted to write. I ran slowest in gym class, little legs pumping a full lap behind the athletic older girls who took the tights from my locker and tied them in a knot like a flag up high. I pretended it wasn't my locker, pressed my back against the metal gills and tried not to breathe, all the eyes watching the empty legs waving in imaginary wind. I waited for everyone to change back into their old Navy shirts and Gap jeans, gather their hair into ponytails and leave. The bell rang in the empty locker room. I untied the knot and slipped my invisible feet in, like a jellyfish's translucent and stinging tentacles, like its empty head, a plastic bag. All right, so I think I'm gonna switch gears, still a little girlhood, but I feel like I need to bring it with the Philan poems. So this one is Milkfish, and this is based on a Cebuano folktale. Milkfish. If your mother craves milkfish when she's pregnant with you, and if the sea stops putting their gaping mouths on your father's hook, and if your father begs the sea for more, he will owe the saltwater something. You, black-haired and 7 years old, will be swallowed by a wave. Forget your best friends or the chapter book you haven't finished. Forget the freckled neck of the boy you stare at during English class and sometimes during mass. Forget, too, your mother's warm hands on your shoulders before she braids your hair into ropes, her ensemadas sprinkled with cheese and sugar. Your feet won't fit in any pair of sandal or sneaker. You'll feel those bones splay, soft as straw. Maybe you imagine this underwater life as glint and dazzle, scallop shell bikinis, bottlenose dolphins, and pearls plentiful as fish eggs. Instead, the seaweed strangles you in sleep. Plastic six-pack rings handcuff your wrists, and all the skeletons of smaller fish tangle in your hair like ugly combs. Coelacanths are the only sparkle, twisting their bodies into blades in the sand. When the moon is a white circle, your feet will come back. Walk to your old house where your father disappears into a quiet nothing, and find your mother still cooking milkfish, stuffed and baked, fried in oil, pickled in vinegar and garlic, bodies not unlike your own. Let's see. Where's my time at? All right. Okay. I feel like when I read some of these poems, I have to like really contextualize them and kind of like explain things. And I don't really feel like I need to do that with this crowd. So I'm just gonna jump into it. Y'all know about skin bleaching. So this one's called Pond's White Beauty. My sister and I watch a commercial. Twin Filipino beauties washing their faces. They splash water like diamonds, velvety suds, black silk hair and smooth pink apple cheeks, both paler than any relatives we've met here, paler than the quiet Welsh and Japanese blood in both of us. On the screen, a blind date in a blazer rings the doorbell. The more porcelain sister answers. Her fluorescence lights his stupid smile. The door opens wider to reveal her apricot twin, flushed with melanin next to the sharp, pallid sister. The man frowns. we frown, knowing that the next scene will be the sister sharing her secret potion. Just use Pond's White Beauty Fairness Cream to bleach the sun from your skin, to make you milky translucent. On the second date, he sees them both glowing ghostly identical, laughing at how beautiful they've both become, unable to tell which girl is his date. We are two sisters in the middle of the world where the sun paints us bronze. In the dark instant between commercials, our brown faces appear in the TV's glass where their blanched and smiling ovals once shone. Okay, let's see. So once again, not going to give any context. Y'all know about Manananggal, so I'm just going to go into it. I feel like I always have to compare it to a vampire and explain what she does, but y'all get it. So here's self-portrait as Manananggal. They ask me where I'm from, and the answer is hundreds of years old. Is that last name Spanish, from Spain? I sharpen my claws and answer carefully. Originally, I say, because colonization. They tell me they need to read up on that. When I split in two, they don't understand. They speak louder and slower. They explain what should be done instead. Where are you really from? Or, I don't see color. I leave my brown legs and ass in a secret place and rise above, meaning aerial, bat's eye view, inhaling through my nose and counting to 10. I come back and combine with myself. I fill in the bubble marked other. I use a hyphen. In the Philippines, they deter me with seasoning, salt, garlic, ash. They reflect me ghostly on billboards, erase my melanin with papaya soap and Photoshop. Here, I am repelled by questions, mispronunciation, fetish, and the phrase, I know how it feels to be. Okay, I think I'm gonna read just a couple more. So I'm gonna read this poem. I had to teach this cultural competency class at work last week, and it was all about microaggressions. And then I realized that this poem is about one of my earliest memories, and it is a microaggression. So this poem is called All Filipino Women Are Beautiful. All Filipino women are beautiful. An old man with white hair says to my brown, full-lipped face, and I don't know why, but it doesn't feel like a compliment. When he says this, we're at the airport, bags packed for a 3-day flight, and maybe he's just asked where to. I'm about 4, with crooked bangs and buck teeth, my Lola holding my hand in all the long lines. Maybe she just smiles or thanks the man. After all, we all want to be maganda, like the Filipina Barbie on a friend's tall shelf, hair swept into a shellacked knot, gold beaded dress, and her tiny waist clipped into the plastic stand. I too think all Filipino women are beautiful, or are supposed to be a certain kind of beautiful, like this Barbie, or photos I've seen of Imelda with the same stiff wings as sleeves. But they are not the same brown-armed Filipino women I know that play pekwa with my Lola and bring fields of pancit, or the titas in slippers taking jeepneys in the shadow of a volcano. Instead, these beauties are fair as the flesh crayon I use to color in everyone, their lips painted pink, their eyes smoky and tilted just so. And maybe I carry this with me for years, watching Miss America pageants, flipping through teen magazines, never seeing myself, but watching my reflection in the car's side mirror, trying to tuck in my lips, fold them against my teeth, thinner, like the other girls at my school, like the girls I see everywhere. See. Okay. I think I can maybe squeeze in 2 more. Okay, so I'm gonna read this poem. I was just looking at the final issue of the Lantern Review, and I was reading Luisa Gloria and Ina Carino's poems, and I was like, is there a Phil-Am chicken thing happening? Because both their poems were very chicken poems. And so I was like, I need to read my chicken poem. So this is How to Resurrect a Chicken. My Lolas sort organs under the mango tree, shiny wet plums and beans, stuffing the empty body of a chicken. They push sharp wet feathers into its skin and sew its head to body with a knife. The older Lola grabs its feet and dunks the body head first into a bucket of warm water. A bubble at the surface swims down to the bottom. The chicken swallows it and comes back to life, splashing. She pulls it out of the water, its feathers dry and neck bleeding, swings it onto the rock under her slippered foot. She knocks the blood-rusted hatchet against the chicken's throat in soft taps. She holds a bowl of rice, soaked dark with purple blood, under the chicken's neck. Big grin, and she tells me it's chicken chocolate. The chicken's neck wound gulps blood from the blade and bowl, the color from rice, bleaching it white and dry. The gash shrinks, pinches itself shut like an eye. She sets the chicken upright. It walks backwards, away from her, shaking its feathers into unruffled shape. Okay, last poem. All right, so this poem is the oil painting that hangs on my Lola's wall. My imagined Philippines takes place in a painting, orange sunset mirror on the water, straw huts in Carabao, something about rice swept in its hulls on the tile floor, a pot of rice over an outdoor flame, salt, fish, heavy air and accent, dusk and itch, sweet diesel and smoke. This landscape is a feather caught in the float between birdskin and concrete. I do not really know this place. I imagine my Lola's stories in this setting, mudfish scales glinting in the cracks of floors and the burning smell of work and gasoline, the youngest of 3 sisters, their names so full of poetry, Crescenciana, Marcosa, and Remedios, a girl worn down by all the things she has to bear, this dim world and all the others before her. Thank you.
Beautiful. All right, Barbara Jane, you are up.
I have unmuted myself. Danny, that was gorgeous. Thank you so much for that. Anissa and San Francisco Public Library, thank you so much for having us. This is our 3rd year of virtual Philam History Month literary events, and I'm always so happy when you contact me to curate another cohort of readers. And I was saying to my co-readers here earlier that you know, folks' writing become known to me, and I just want to share space with them, right? And have, you know, and see what happens with the chemistry. So thank you all for joining us, folks. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to begin with the ending poem to my last book of poetry, Letters to a Young Brown Girl. And this is the last letter, the last Dear Brown Girl letter, which is comprised of 100 itemized sentences. Dear Brown Girl, you have come to me to ask how a brown girl writes and lives and writes, when it feels like no one cares. You have come to ask me whether it is true that no one cares for some brown girl. You have come to me because you need me to see you. Yes, it is true. If our identities are not for sale, then no one cares about some brown girl. I'm sorry if what I say here are not the things that you want to hear from me. Some say it is bourgeois privilege for the battleground to be the page. I think the page could be one of the weapons in our armories. Diversity, inclusion, and multicultural blunt the narrative. Patriarchy and empire disorient. Status and privilege pervert our aim. Let's put those words back on the shelf where they belong. I have no identity to sell. What is mine is precious to me. Though others would tell me nothing is mine, not the air in my lungs, not the ground beneath my feet. You may unfollow me on social media if you don't like what I'm saying, and this is okay. You ask for kindred words from me because, like you, my ancestors' words are slowly losing their ground. You have come to me fearing kapwa, hoping I could allay this fear. You have come to me seeking kapwa, hoping I could clarify this sight. I learned that kapwa is seeing the self in others. I think of kapwa as a sanctuary of shared selves. Speakers of our elders' words do not wish to see themselves in the flushed and stuttering selves we have become. We can't find the correct idioms fast enough. We no longer know the correct accent marks and glottal stops. We came of age here, silent, witnessing kapwa's erosion and erasure. You want me to affirm that the proper response is outrage. You want me to affirm your outrage. Yes, there is outrage, a heat in my blood. It is a silent, slow, and steady burn. But there is so much sadness, being so torn from my elders and kin. But there is so much noise, so much shouting above the shouting. This is where we start shutting other people up, deciding who gets to speak and what they get to say. This is where we assign a price to voice and who must pay in order to speak. This is where we come to buy and sell voice, and then voice is only for those who can afford it. This is where we invent adages about voicelessness. And we continue to shout the things other people are shouting. And we continue to shout, and it becomes easy to ignore all of the shouting. And we continue to shout, and it becomes easy to pretend nobody is shouting. I want to think we all resist becoming the thing we are shouting at, though this may not be true. How may we honor this thing called voice, and how can we honor our kapwa? I fear all the shouting depletes our loob, which is where the wisdom of our elders has rooted. Conquerors documented this wisdom as superstition, godlessness, the lore of lowly women and unenlightened people. You have come to me asking that I serve as beacon, and now I see we had not previously agreed on what needed illumination. We now busy ourselves with curriculum vitae items, noteworthy mentions, hit counters, hyperlinks, and into social media posts from glass ceilings, the dropping of names onto unswept gum-stuck floorboards, which barely cover the dirt. I do not know that our elders envisioned this dim administrative morass for us. You must understand, I thought we came here to discuss liberation, and now I see that we had not previously agreed upon defining the term together. One brown girl's liberation is another brown girl's bloated bureaucracy, monuments of microaggression, mansplaining, and migraines. One brown girl's woke is another brown girl's mess of vacuous memes and info bites, as if these things were precious clean water during centuries-long drought. Why must one brown girl's words doom another brown girl to erasure? Why must one brown girl's words be buried for being too much, for being not enough, for being unlike everyone else's? Can we return to that loob where there is potential for ourselves to grow into something other people, we ourselves, do not expect? We can world build unorthodox, fierce from our loob, there unmapped places, using everything we can get our hands on. Remember, our elders were experts at third world improvisation, filling our bellies despite famine, salvaging master works from basura. We marvel at how low and how few the parts are required for making masterpiece. Let there be no romance, no artifice here. Our elders' world building gave us life. I see now my late father's love for swap meets and junkyards through a different lens. He took the broken, the throwaways, last year's off-brand items, inkjet printers, scientific calculators, so many lenses and glasses, digital wristwatches, remote control race cars, landline telephones. He dissembled, tinkered, and reconfigured these into something else. Sometimes you break apart the old thing, if only to find that one reusable part. Sometimes he made art, and some won ribbons affixed to their title plates. This was my father's loob. Sometimes he failed, and we were left with jagged mountains of parts in his garage. This was also my father's loob. He was a master of salvage and scavenge, and we were ashamed of his junk. I want to think this was my father's way of telling us he knew the sheen of prestige in this country dulls. I want to think he knew we could never buy prestige in the first place. I never wanted to agree with him. I fought with him until I could no longer deny much evidence was in his favor. I thought all my classmates lived in accessorized Barbie dream houses. Arranged tidy inside their Barbie dream houses, lemon oil polished dining sets. I thought all of my classmates lived matching Tupperware lives. Arranged tidy inside their Tupperware, PBJs on uncrusted Wonder Bread. They were whole and wholesome, and we were something else. We learned the words for what they thought we were. We took those words into our bodies, and their dull blades hollowed us to incompletion. We were told to translate hiya as shame. Others translate it as propriety, a dignity that comes from the inside, the loob, and this is a lot different from shame. My father's art pieces were sometimes incomplete, and that itself was a narrative. Let there be no shame in being incomplete. My father's art pieces were sometimes imperfect, and that itself was a narrative. Let there be no shame in being imperfect. I am one of my father's incomplete, imperfect pieces. My father's junkyard scavenge is now my unruly poetic statement, my verse monstrosities, my mixed up diction. I'm trying to assign it order, but most times it will not abide. People say, why aren't you ashamed? People say, why do you broadcast our shame? People say, why don't you just shut up? People say, why are you still here? People say, why haven't you disappeared? Have you ever been made to feel so little? Have you ever made anyone feel so little? If art is a series of fine lenses, then the shame is not hard to see. Beneath those lenses, we are misfitted parts jammed together, fractured at the edges, dirtied from so much mishandling. Beneath the lenses, we are sad little colonies hoarding our secondhand items. Beneath the lenses, we are sad little colonies frantic for our grime-covered shelters. See how we are not a smiling, suburban, single-family home-owning, TV sitcom nuclear body. Inside the body that is our overcrowded house, our fists have made holes in the walls, our hands throw glass plates, mismatched plates, any object within reach. Inside the body, the heat rises, fibers tear and unravel, vessels collapse, the body shuts down. Inside the broken, dirty, dark people that we are, loob has been torn from us. It continues to be torn from us. This is trauma. This trauma is not a little thing that you can brush off your shoulders. This trauma is not a little thing that makes you interesting and diverse. You want to smack a smug motherfucker for saying that to your face. If your loob has been torn from you, this is an act of terror. If your loob has been torn from you, this is not done by an invisible hand. If your loob is repackaged, relabeled, and sold back to you at a premium, send it back. This jagged wound opened and salted for others to enjoy how we smart. This is terror. At some point, we stop asking who is assaulting us, the pleasure they derive tearing us from our loob. I think we should start asking again. I think we should start asking why. Inside the body, roots thicken and tangle to repair us. It may not be pretty, but it will hold us together. I'm sorry if the things I'm saying here are not the things you wish to hear. You may unfriend me on social media. You may block me on social media, and I'll be okay with this. Maybe loob translates as heart. I think the heart is only part of that. I don't think that we should stop making art from our loob. Do you? Okay. And now I am going to read what I thought was going to be the closing poem to my most current poetry manuscript. And then I looked at it again and I thought, well, maybe this actually should be the beginning of my next manuscript. And it is called Daughter Song Diaspora, which won the Elizabeth Alexander Creative Writing Award from Meridian's Transnationalism and Feminism Journal, which was like, that's kind of dope. So I'm pleased about this. So this is Daughter Song Diaspora. 1. This is my story, the one I made up about myself and told to no one, the one I scribbled into my notebook that nobody knew about. They say my mother fastened her wings and she flew across the ocean, back to her own mother's nest, where I was pulled from her body, drooling, salted, already browned, eyes open, already speaking, already asking. They say my mother then refastened her wings and then she flew away. This is my book of holy things. 2. The first time my mother flew away, I was still learning my first language, my psalms of Paalam, which is to say, my mother tongue's absence, is classifying beautiful birds in flight, is fibrous diaspora that the wind lifts into myth. Next, it was my turn to fly, to find her in the cold gray of San Francisco Bay, uprooted tropical seed, all milk, teeth, talismans, questions in my many-tongued mouth. I learned to bind my poems in abaca. I learned to speak in subtracted tongues, tongue-tied always, too accented or too unaccented, winged syllables spat and grounded, consonants hardened as silken seeds scattered, drought deprived and dumb. I sang in secret in the dirt. I listened, girl, child, orb weaving eggshell, root, and bark into time, composed spells from pine cones, ladybugs, and lullaby. 3. Pagyamanak. Agony in the garden is the first sorrowful mystery. Ave Maria, napno ka ti gracia, ni Apo Diyos, ti ada kenka. Ave Maria in abundance, and all this novena to no avail. Bagsak. This beautiful blood-warm babaylan, ay babae, ay bagyo, babae become brittle vessel, babae brimming to burst. Kabsat, cozy kadwa, once in my mother's cocoon, carcinosarcoma has instead recast her a cleaving chrysalis. She closes her eyes. Diwata, Dios di Angina, deities of air, of water, of sky. When you decide to take her from us, dear Diwa, please brush her hair and sing her a lullaby. Eve, her even song, an ever-blipping cadence, electronic vespers, early into dawn. Forget. Gataran, fragrant green girlhood of my mother, where I wanted just one moment of grace with her. But now grief is my gold and my ghost and my gravity. Hangin, filled with hummingbirds, alika, in the chest, homing, here, the heart monitor, I cannot unhear it, thrumming in my own hollowed out heartwood. Ilocano, ita ken inton oras di ipapatay mi. In an ideal world, this poem, all my poems, I would intone in my mother's mother tongue. Jusko, as in Diyos ko po, just how much one woman body endures. Kadwa, kaasian na kami, kaasian na kami, kalapati cooing like us, mourning, flame-breasted, black-naped, and hearts bleeding. Lakbay. In the song that goes, Lumipad ka, kaibigang Maya, I'm thinking of Laya and Layu too. Matris. My mother's mother used to say we were molded from mud, now only mimesis of mythology and miracle. Nagan, hers meaning living one, light, mother of life, little bird. Ngalan, what had she prophesied when she named me? Oyayi, sing oceanic, ask if grief tips us to overpour. Ask if this is what one's lungs become when overcome. Puso, paano na pag pumanaw ka na? Gibarbara, the quick-tongued queen mother birthed quick-tongued brown daughters. Gay aurora. Rabii, remember our river, remember our robin's eggs, shells cool blue, robed in rosy sunset, nesting and resting in my mother's jasmines. Sugat, again, suratmet. Sing Sampagita and seashell. She has slipped out of sakit into starlight. Spirit, she has soared into the swallowtail sky. Tutubi. Tumanggap ng mga pakpak at pagkatapos, transfiguration hanggang langit. How to translate any of it? Ulila, of this untied umbilicus, unknowing, untranslatable, all I can say is this. Siya ang ugat ng aking lahat, and that is all there is to that. Boses, what color, what texture, what timbre did hers have? See above, regarding, forget. Wala na. Bakit, apay, and why, what all I should have asked her, what all I should have said, whether she would have answered. Ekis, films held up to light box, showing images of trees rooting, branching, flowering, bearing fruit, seeding, and brooding again and again. Yakap, and also Yari, how to navigate the passage of this mother body. Zarzuela, ay, Apujos, we always loved a good song and dance number. We kind of lived in one once, didn't we? 4. The last time my mother flew away, she must have returned to her mother. I want all the maps, almanacs of wind and ocean currents. I want a silver compass, inlaid diaspora marking true north, leather prayer books in my mother's mother tongue, olive wood rosaries, copper dowsing rods, bronze egg-shaped agimat. What languages must I relearn? What sacred songs, what incantations shall I pull from deep memory into the light? I pray. Please help me find my mother. I hold to my heart my silvered amulets, Virgin Mother, headstrong Tokaya, lightning, rose-clad wild daughter, little one of mighty noise. How may I regain my faith? Cleansed by the waters of Fatima, she shines starlight. Let me find my mother in a state of pure, unfettered joy. And that is it. That's what I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara Jane. That was really amazing and wonderful. And I love bringing in the family. Fall is time to bring in the ancestors and bring them close. So that was really, really lovely. All right, Jen, you are next.
Thank you, Anissa.
Let me get you spotlit. All right, there we go.
Okay. Whew, I gotta take a breath after that. That was utterly beautiful. And thank you for sharing your father and mother with us through those poems. That was just beautiful. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I just am so honored to be part of this panel with the 4 of you and to be celebrating Filipino American History Month. I rarely get asked to do anything for Filipino American History Month, and so this feels like an honor. I am going to start out with something that I wrote recently for the 40th anniversary of the Filipino American National Historical Society, and who, by the way, for folks who do not know, are the original advocates for Filipino American History Month. And it's actually the 30th anniversary of FAM. Well, so this is called This Land is an Exchange, with a shout out to Barbara M. Posadas for the historical context in the piece. And my dog wants to chime in. All right. Do you all know this one? If you do, I invite you to sing along. From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me. I grew up in between the redwood forests and the Gulf Stream waters, in the breadbasket of the United States, the American Midwest, the heartland, in a flyover area of what would mostly be a flyover state, except for the city of Chicago. I grew up in a flyover area at a crossroads of suburbs and sod farms, sloughs and septic tanks, on a gravel street sometimes littered with dead deer and turtle shells. As a child, I had no idea how we got there. According to our neighbors, my family spoke real good English, and they thought it was cool that we had an Italian last name. According to my parents, in their nonverbal language, we had always been there, grown here like the corn stalks rooted in Cargill soil. Those yellow kernels of corn stuck hard to firm cobs hung from stalks that stood proud in rows that just made sense. When I saw those same kernels of corn appear in our bowls of kinataan and in our mouthfuls of maja blanca, I knew that my parents must have been right. We sprouted here. We fruited here. We never crossed the earth's largest sea. Later, I learned about my parents' migration. We speak of waves. In between the waves are ripples, like fields of rippling wheat that look like an ocean of brown and gold. My parents rode one of these ripples to America during the time of quotas, when only 100 Filipinos could enter per year, because this was the quantity of independent little brown brothers and sisters the United States government deemed it could bear. Hold on one second. Okay, full disclosure, I printed this out on scrap paper and printed it on the wrong side of the scrap paper. So I tried to read in between the other words, and that did not work. So I'm going to pull it up on my screen. I was like, I remember it. And I'm like, no, I don't remember it. Okay, so I have it on the screen. Okay, great. Where did I leave off? Okay. Well, rippling wheat that looks like an ocean of brown and gold. Yes, right. Okay, little brown brothers and sisters that the United States government deemed it could bear. Unless you were a war bride, active military, or qualified for educational exchange. Before coming to America, my father almost took a job at the Philippine General Hospital. He also almost rooted himself in his birth soil as a doctor at a family clinic in Tondo. But he qualified for educational exchange, and so he went to America and stayed. Before coming to America, my mother had a pharmacy in Caloocan City, but she wanted to get a PhD in industrial pharmacy in New York. She would have qualified for educational exchange, but then she met my father, they got married, and they stayed. Educational exchange happened through the J-1 visa system meant to, quote, promote a better understanding of the United States and other countries. Educational exchange was the source of some of the first Filipinos in the heartland, the self-financed pensionados who in the early 1920s and 30s went to study mostly at Midwestern universities. To pay for their educations, they worked as waiters, bellboys, personal servants. Some worked on auto assembly lines in Detroit. Educational exchange was the source of how my family got here, on a program of skills trade, but also pacification, propaganda, and foreign workforce development. Our America began as a pipeline of labor, a return on investment for the $20 million with which the US bought the Philippines from Spain. But our America becomes what we make of it. In a land of redwood forests, Gulf Stream waters, bars and stripes, we are the light of a yellow sun. To paraphrase Bulosan, America is in the eyes of those that are building a new world. To quote Harjo, these lands aren't our lands. These lands aren't your lands. We are this land. To quote ourselves, listen to our stories, for they are how we got here. Our stories are our songs of love, and we will sing of us, exchange the lyrics of this land with the words that we have tilled with our hearts. Okay, thank you for bearing with me. All right, and so now this next one, this is my next and last one. And I have a content note for anybody watching with maybe with family, with small ones, maybe. There's swearing. And there's also some creepy stuff because it's a ghost story. It's a moo story. So, and I act out some of the moo-ness, so could possibly get a little, extra creepy. So just be fairly warned. And it's all true, every single word of it. It's basically about if there's any Tagalog speakers out there, it's about paramdam, about a couple of visitations, very powerful visitations that I had from a very, very good friend, like a kapwa soulmate. And it is called Ashlight. Maybe it was a sign when you moved in with me and it turned out we shared the apartment with ghosts. At first, we thought they were airplanes, just airplanes that extinguished the sun, casting momentary darkness across the living room like a shadowy Morse code. But then one day we came home to the handprints. They were small hands, child's hands. 3 of them forming a lopsided pyramid on our living room window. You tried to wipe them clean with a towel and they stayed. It took several swipes for us to realize that they were imprinted on the outside of the pane. We peered out the window down the 1-story drop to the concrete alley below. What manner of child was this to have left 3 small handprints on the outside of our window pane in a narrow alleyway 10 feet above the ground? We shrugged it off. It was the mission. Anything could happen here. We ate our burritos and smoked weed and watched infomercials till the early morning, then went to sleep in our separate rooms. Not long after, I was reading on my bed when I heard you dragging your laundry through the hallway. Only it sounded much heavier than laundry, like you were dragging somebody. I opened my door and you weren't there. No one was there. I closed the door and the dragging sound resumed. I pushed a chair up against the door, then thought twice and tilted it to jam the top of its backrest in the doorknob like I'd seen people do in movies. Frantically, I fished matches from a drawer and lit 3 candles on my altar, willing the fire to draw good spirits and ward away the bad. The flame sizzled alive and the dragging sound ceased. I sat on the floor in front of the altar, my body slumping in relief until my arm suddenly began to move. My left arm began to make a wave. My right one formed a circle. What the fuck? What the fuck? I thought as I watched my body being moved by something or some other body. I tried to freeze. I tried to spring up onto my bed, but my limbs were no longer my own. When you came home later and I told you what had happened, you said, we'd better do some ceremony or some shit to clear the air. We never did. We moved out, not because of the ghosts, but because you were stealing money to pay rent and also eating all my food. After we'd moved, we found out that a man who used to live in that apartment had died on the stairwell outside, and then another had supposedly killed himself on the back steps. When I walked by the apartment a few months later and saw that it was still empty, the building manager told me the place was hard to rent because people never stayed for long. We had become some of those people, never staying, always leaving. I rarely talked to you between then and when you left for good. I was pissed at you for stealing money and for lying about it. And I was pissed at you for eating all my cereal and for always leaving one goddamn flake at the bottom of the box. But mostly, I was angry at you for dying. And then I was scared as hell that you came back. When we first met, you were wearing a suit the color of ash. A friend introduced us, and it was immediately a collision of minds. We said, "Nice to meet you," in one breath and started talking shit to each other in the next. From that point forward, we were Bonnie and Clyde, Thelma and Louise. We shared laughter and singing to keep our demons at bay, wore companionship as a shroud to mask our loneliness. A dear friend later said he would give his eyes for you, and I replied, I would give mine first. Two particles in proximity collide like palm of hand and bata skin, like sand becoming glass. Chemical physics of fact tells us like dissolves like. Opposites entangle. Dark absorbs light until atoms flow across the void. Nature abhors a vacuum. Shortly after we met, we joined a band. We spent so much time together that when you moved in with me, the rumor mill ground doubt to dust. Everyone knew we were a romantic couple. We liked to add grist to the mill, feeding the narrow imaginations that could not envision two cis hetero-presenting people in a deep but platonic relationship. We made it a point to attend weddings together where we danced and posed like prom dates. Meanwhile, our reality was this. You were my brother and you were more. There were no sufficient words to describe our relationship on this plane. Your light kept me tethered to this world. And when you left, at first, there was no good explanation for why your body failed you. Rumors flew. You had overdosed. You were poisoned. Someone found a lock of hair in a plastic bag and said you'd made a deal with the devil. The doctor sent a piece of your heart tissue to the Centers for Disease Control, and what they found was Coxsackie virus, a common virus that causes hand, foot, and mouth disease. Only in rare cases can it cause sudden death. You were one of those rare cases, a 29-year-old otherwise healthy person, a dancer, a mover without health insurance who had died from a virus overwhelming your heart. These were pre-pandemic days, and perhaps because your death was so unbelievable, it was easier to believe that you would come back. About a month after you died, I was alone in my apartment watching a Discovery Channel show on paranormal phenomena. The show had ended and the credits were rolling along with strange symphonic music. Theremins were wheezing and deep bass was thumping, and then suddenly my phone rang. Hello? What I heard made my arm hair stand on end. Jen. The voice on the line was stuttering, unmodulated. My body went cold. Who is this? Jen. The voice repeated, more shrill this time. It was you. Supposedly, you had taken over our friend Angela's body. You could have asked first. Your ex-girlfriend was on the other line explaining to me what was happening. I think Angela's channeling BJ, she said. I'm putting her or him back on. My hairs were still on end. I listened. I answered questions. I asked questions. And then I got used to the stuttering and the unearthly prosody of the voice. We talked for a full half hour, and by the end of the phone call, I really felt that I had spoken with you a month after you died. You told me to marry the guy I was dating. I did. You told me to check up on our bandmate who was using again. I tried. Before we hung up, you said we'd talk again. I like to think now that you are like the ghosts who inhabited our old apartment, but more settled and kinder in the way that you like to haunt. Fast forward 1 year from the chill of San Francisco to the higher ground of Taos, New Mexico. I've been sent here by coworkers who believe that a silent meditation retreat will break me out of a harmful cycle of depression, burnout, and pain. Clang, 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 rings the iron bell. It's time for evening walking meditation. Before leaving, I walk upstairs to visit our altar to the deceased. I had forgotten a photo, so I tore a corner from the top sheet of a yellow legal pad and scrawled your name, BJ Alisago, in ballpoint pen. Embarrassed by the clumsiness of my tribute, I had placed the paper scrap partly hidden on the farthest corner of the altar. Now I step into the room to approach the center of the altar, but my body begins to move strangely, and I suddenly recall the night in our old apartment when something made my body dance. I try to walk straight toward the altar, but instead, my right leg crosses in front of my left and pushes me to the side again and again. For no good reason, I am doing involuntary curtsies, lurching diagonally across the room. When my body finally stops, I'm at the far corner of the altar, immediately in front of the torn yellow paper with your name. What the hell, I say in my head. BJ, are you here? In response, my gaze lifts to the window where I see the gray stone fire circle in the meadow. Should we go to the fire? I ask silently, and in my mind, I hear ashes to ashes and dust to dust. You're with me, I feel glee, like a child reunited with a long-lost playmate. I pick up my legs, the lurching is done, and I run downstairs and out the door. This is fun, I giggle to the wind. Around me, twilight is turning the sky from indigo to ink. The tree shadows converge with the mountain peaks to form darkness. Ashes to ashes and dust to dust. Like a mantra, these words repeat in my mind, and I feel your push on my back lighten, then leave. No, you can't go, I hear myself saying out loud, desperate. Don't leave. I do not want to be alone again. As I say these words, my foot hits a stone. I've reached the fire circle. You've come and gone, but you are leaving your mark, a halo of ether and stardust. I look down at the circle, orange embers pulsing. I look left. A dozen points of light ignite as other retreat goers turn on flashlights in near synchronicity. I turn around. The main cabin glows as the caretaker hangs 2 kerosene lamps from the eaves. One more turn, a fire in the sanctuary where our meditation leader has coaxed flames to life. You are showing me 360 degrees of your return, the way your love leaves its prints, keeps us reaching toward the void, toward a space full of matter. At last, my gaze moves skyward and there appears Venus, shining like the first night star. Thank you.
That was so scary. That was good. It was really good. All right. And again, not last but not least, Isabel, where are you? Okay, tried to hide. Here we go. Adding the spotlight. All right. Isabel Yap.
Great. Well, I'm still freaked out about the ghosts. I believe in ghosts, but I believe that they don't come to me. So hopefully nothing was called by that. Woo. Yeah, well, I'm very grateful to hear from everyone here, and thanks to everyone who's listening in here or elsewhere or after. I thought I'd start by reading 2 poems, and then I'll read a section of a story. So the first poem I'll read is called Alamat. It's available online, and you can find it on my website or a link there, but I'll get started. Alamat, the banana plant. Her hand and the embodiment of being left behind. Her hand beneath the soil, the weight of leaves and dirt, what to make it hold, what the word held even means, terrifying secrets buried in the yard. Why must her love be the reason behind a swishing sword? You are not a witch, your breathless prayers are not magic. the volcano ladies. One of them was very angry. There was violence. Can you hear the word slope without thinking of a woman's breast? Do you consider lava first or ash? What is being buried in this tale? Whose body equates to praise? Maria. Kissed the villager, wanted to marry him, was tempted to slap him, lay with him, the farmer, the farmhand, the priest, the barrio mayor. Her hair seemed endless in their fingers. Her skin was nut brown. Her curves could evoke groans like the hull of a boat. Wherever she lay, even the earth wanted her. The pineapple. Despite everything, Mother loved her even through the lazy days and the fact that she would not rise for the smallest thing. She knew this from the creases on Mother's face, the glimmering tear multiplied 100 times, the fractured way the wooden spoon dropped from the old woman's trembling hand. The Sampaguita. Because she is lovely, they name her Dawn. Of course, she must fall in love with a man nearly gored by a wild pig. But once they've sworn eternal love, he must leave her, and she must stand by the window and wait. Of course, her last words must be, "You promised." Of course, she dies of loneliness, still whispering. As expected, the flowers on her grave smell sweet. The Lanzones. But you weren't there, they tell her. You didn't see his egg-white eyes, the foam on the corners of his mouth, the way he scratched his throat and took too long to die. You say your fingers can remove the poison, but we shall never again hunger for sweet things. The termite. I don't know this story. I expect she wore a crown and death was involved. The fish. Ensconcing corals, bombed but never burnt. That net, these islands hemming us in. Explain the fist, now fin, these gradients of blue. Did she speak of home in bubbles? Did the story ever mention her thighs? Where was she swimming to, thrashing in the water, yet still so graceful? The Makahiya. And what is wrong, she hissed, crouched on her knees with her hands over her face, with being shy, with choosing loneliness? What is so wrong with crying? Maria again. So many Marias lined up, sisters and wives, nubile, underage, stooped and pregnant, with skinned knees without breasts, round-eyed pebbles and sunburnt faces, undulating in a sea of thick black hair. This isn't my story, she wept. She was wearing a torn saya, palm fronds, a recycled dress from Divisoria. She was wearing nothing at all. I could not say what her smile meant. Her fingers were cold as they brushed my lips and tipped my head upright. Now you go, anak, she said. All right, that's one poem. And then the next poem is called The Multiple Lives of Juan and Pedro. So this one goes, 2 children asleep in each other's arms by the gutter, wreathed in Tetra Paks and plastic bottles. In the wake of the flood, their bodies the color of mud, coated in mud, one's face buried in the other's neck, one's arm snaked beneath the other's sandal, their lips the color of cigarette ash and grime from the river that tucked them into bed. Juan, with cataracts in his eyes, puts down the blade he has been using to slice sugarcane. It is the part in the story where the mayor comes to be unreasonably rude and to threaten Juan's beautiful teenage daughter, who will be shown no mercy. And Jusko, it's that bit where the goon comes to crush one's bones, one's spirit. One will cry, "Mga hayop." One will beg, "Maawa naman kayo." And the goon will break him and feel nothing. His name is Pedro. He is only doing his job. Pedro wears butterfly clips in his hair. He claims Yaya put them there, but we all know better. We see how Juan shudders when Pedro passes, how that top button is buttoned, how he cannot ignore the bruises Pedro wears like a stack of bracelets all down his arm, just another bonga accessory, no? Pedro holds up his hand at the intersection, motions with his baton, and Juan slows the taxi to a stop as the doña in the backseat sighs at the text she just sent. Is it a loving sigh or an annoyed sigh? Juan cannot tell. Pedro shakes his hips in time to the traffic countdown as the radio asks, "Kailangan pa bang i-memorize yan?" Juan nods to Pedro and says, "Peace be with you." Juan's daughter makes a peace sign at Pedro's daughter. Juan's wife smiles at Pedro's wife. Pedro shoulders his rifle, unsure of what he is marching for. He passes Juan on the street, and Juan hands him a piece of pandesal. It is such a tiny gesture, but the bread is so hot in his hands, in his mouth, so salty and barely sweet. The rain rages down, and Juan races for Pedro as Pedro runs out of his house, shouting for him. They grab each other's hands. They watch the river swell. They know they'll be buoyed here. It might be very lonely. Without the other, they remember the blood in the sugarcane fields, the butterfly clips, the stoplight, the song they sang in mass that day, the breadcrumbs. They remember. Something will be given. Something will be taken away. Okay, and now I will be reading just a little bit from the start of the last story in my collection, Never Have I Ever. Oh, it's shiny. This came out last February, so February 2021. And the last story is called A Canticle for Lost Girls. It's a bit of a horror story. It's about Catholic schoolgirls. It's fiction, but it's basically all drawn from real life and things that happen to, some things that happen to, I guess, parts of my high school. So the main characters are made up and what happened to them is made up, but all the scenes are like actual. So yeah, I'll just be reading a little bit from the start. And if you want to hear the rest, you can pick up the book. A Canticle for Lost Girls. Have you ever noticed yourself on your knees and thought, oh, I don't like this? I'm braiding Andy's hair, struggling through a complicated style I found on Pinterest, when she catches my eye in the mirror and says, Mommy, how did you and Ninang CJ and Ninang Tisha become friends? Andy's eyes are humongous. There's a deep dimple on one of her cheeks. She's incredibly cute, and I don't think that just because she's mine. The only thing I don't like about her is she has this slight manipulative streak, like when she calls me mommy or Ray daddy. Lilting, sweet, Ray always falls for it. I try not to. Is it cruel to think of your own child this way, to be suspicious of her? But I'm suspicious of everyone. Ray can't decide if he finds it unseemly or attractive about me, saying, You're so preening all the time, I feel like I gotta protect you, while he kisses me and cups one of my breasts through my pambahay. I love him too much to tell him, I don't think I need his protection. Our moms were all lunch mothers, so we hung out during lunch in grade 1. Then in grade 2 and 3, we did summer swimming classes and were in the same section and joined the cooking club together. I finish braiding the left side of her hair and secure it with a goodie elastic. She cries, ouch, but doesn't really mean it. Already, she's squirming out of my grip to check how it looks in the mirror. I still have to do the other side, I say. Okay, Mommy, you're so slow, she giggles. I don't want to hurt you, so I'm trying to be careful. Her thoughtless jab stings, even as I think. What am I doing, making my lovely daughter even lovelier? I know what a terrible idea that is. I know so well I can't even tell her the truth about CJ and Tisha, how we spent most of our time at St. Agnes not being friends, hurting each other in that special way young girls do. How we love each other now only because we called the dark as one voice. How that happened our junior year of high school at our spiritual retreat, when we summoned a cruel thing to destroy our CL teacher. How I don't regret it, and I wonder what that makes me, even as I deny the answer. A thing with secret claws, a face in the mirror that swivels, unhinging secret jaws. Our feet were dirty when we entered the retreat house, our heels and soles covered in dried mud and dust. They'd arranged the chairs in a circle around the room and asked us to spread out. Before descending the bus for volunteer work at a village halfway between the city and the retreat house, they'd passed out slippers for us to wear instead of rubber shoes. It was so obvious they were up to something message-wise. For 2 hours, I sat inside a sari-sari store with Janelle Montalban, helping Aling Babes, our assigned manang, sell turon and Max candies and cigarettes. We chit-chatted about Itbulaga, which was playing on the TV. Janelle and I took turns cradling the chubby infant that Aling Babes had been carrying when we arrived. Several times, a manong or child came to ugal at us through the bars, sometimes smirking and calling out, "Uy, sexy." There was a man napping in the back room that kept cuffing. Each time he did, Janelle flinched. Back on the bus, she told me that at some point when I wasn't paying attention, Aling Babes had mentioned that the man, her son, potentially had TB. When we'd all found our seats, Miss Caledo, our homeroom teacher, asked us to stand, then led us in a prayer of thanksgiving for our safe journey. We implored the Lord for a holy, enriching retreat. At Amen, she continued, "Now, girls, take your seats. Myself and your other teachers will be washing your feet." Silence, flickering from amused to unnerved. Sir Tonio and Mrs. Lagdameo appeared, smiling solemnly, bearing plastic bins and pitchers. As Jesus washed his disciples' feet, so too will we wash your feet, as a reminder of our need to always remain humble and willing to serve others, Miss Caledo intoned. One of the retreat house aides entered and handed her a basin. Picking points in the circle at random, the teachers started their work. We made eye contact with each other, grossed out and nearly laughing, until I saw CJ's expression across the room. Sir Tonio and Miss Caledo were closing in on either side of her. As they neared, her face grew more alert. She was trying not to look at Sir Tonio, bent over Kat's feet, oblivious to the way Kat made an exaggerated gagging face. CJ's body shifted away. Her unease radiated to where I watched, useless, inert. She swallowed, and my own throat tightened. My mind closed on the word please. When her eyes met mine, I wanted to look away but couldn't, all my guilt simmering, pinning me in place. If she's so scared of him, maybe it was her picture after all. The spell broke. Miss Caledo reached her first. CJ's body uncoiled, nothing too obvious, just her shoulders slumping so that she looked again like the slob everyone accused her of being. 2 bodies away, Sir Tonio had reached Tisha. From this angle, I could only see the back of his head, but he looked up at her for longer than he did other students. Tisha glanced down at him, smiling her smile of perfection, but she didn't let it last. She lifted her head as he dropped his and scanned the room for someone to charm. I stopped observing before she could catch me. Luckily, Mrs. Lagdaneo knelt before me then, and in her motherly voice said, "Hello, Raquel." "Hi, ma'am," I answered, smiling with effort. Mrs. Lagdameo gestured. I held up my right foot, allowing her to pour water over it. My toes curled from the cold. The teachers weren't using soap, so it wasn't like we were really getting clean. The water in her basin was the color of weak coffee and made me feel sick. We were inseparable in 2nd grade. Mama always told me that, but of course I remember too. "I don't know why you and CJ and Tisha aren't friends anymore," she would sigh. "What happened to you girls?" It bothered me how easily she could bring it up. I missed their friendship too, but I was tired of feeling sorry for myself. Besides, how could I explain all that had happened in the 6 years since? How in 4th grade, we all went to different sections and things started to change so quickly it was hard to tell what was going on. We missed eating together for a week because of various things. Then Tisha started having lunch with some other girls in her section, and CJ got so moody I suddenly didn't want to hang out with her. How that was the start and end of it. How could I tell Mom that Leticia Tan had become one of our batch heartthrobs, growing taller and slimmer in the span of one summer? How in 7th grade she started dating a high schooler from LaSalle, which cemented her reputation as one of the most formidable girls in our batch. She wasn't part of the main popular girl barkada, but had her own posse. Her fierce bluntness was sometimes cruel, but it was difficult to hate her. Not only because she was pretty, it was widely known that she was smart, that she regularly got honors. We did not have a friendship confrontation when things started crumbling in 4th grade. After that year, we simply didn't speak. It was like our whole history as childhood friends didn't matter. And it didn't, not really. The loss barred from my mind, except in those rare moments when we would pass each other in the hall, and I'd think, you traitor, we once role-played Pokemon together for a whole summer. How could you forget that? I was Squirtle, CJ was Bulbasaur, Tisha was Charmander. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Isabel. Okay, I'm going to spotlight everybody and we can have a few questions. We don't want to keep too late. Danny's probably fallen asleep already. Does anyone have questions for our amazing authors? That was so great. And I know there's hands out there and there's lots of love in the chat and lots of viewers on YouTube tonight. So thank you, YouTube viewers. Do any of you have questions for each other? I'll start. Was that a true story, Jen? Because that was super scary.
Yeah, no, everything about it was true. Even that part about watching like a Discovery Channel show on paranormal activity right before. I mean, that's the kind of thing, if it was fiction, you'd have to edit it out because it's just like too much. But it was really happening. So yes. I was going to ask Isabel, those poems that you read, are they in a collection somewhere or somewhere that, no?
No, I'd love to make a poetry collection one day, but I have a real hard time with poetry. I'm not good about submitting it either, so.
I hope you do at some point. I have a question about what it's like to be Pinay in Kentucky, but that's probably a much bigger question than for right now. So I'll just table that for later.
Yeah, there are some of us, and when we find each other, I feel like it's really exciting. Like, oh my gosh, another Filipino Kentuckian, it's you, so but I feel like I'm meeting more. Maybe I'm like putting it out there and then we're like gravitating towards each other. I don't know. But it feels good when we find each other. And I also feel like, we kind of have to sort of expand our identities in that way, just because there are so few of us that there's more what am I trying to say? I'm very tired right now. But just finding other Asian Americans in Kentucky is also a very rare thing, and so being able to have that community is really nice.
I'm curious what has been helping people with their writing practice or even just their reading practice this year. I realized this week I suddenly felt it's hard for me to wake up, and I was like, oh no, that means the cold is coming in. But that means my morning time is down because that's when I write. So I'm just curious if people have found things that have been helpful this year.
Isabel, I wish I had an answer for you because I'm also having a really hard time. I thought I had a complete manuscript, and the only thing that survived from 70 pages of poems was that one poem that that I just read, and I thought, oh, I guess I start here, right? And so I've been kind of holding on to that idea that everything that I wrote prior to that was just exercise to get to that one poem, but it's 70 pages, Jesus. So, maybe it's that, right? right now is a time to be kind of just exercising, you know? So yeah. How about you folks? What do you, is it hard to write right now? Or and Jen, you just had this massive deadline for your manuscript. So what are you doing now in terms of being able to write?
This is now my time where I'm like, I'm just gonna read other people's things. And honestly, you know, when I was trying to finish the book, when I would get to these points where I was like, I can't write anymore right now, I would just read, and that was okay for me. Like, that actually really fed my process. So yeah, I'm gonna read all. Your 3 books are now on my list, and so I'm just looking forward to being in this stage of learning and absorbing. I think it's always good to balance output with resourcing. And I'm not a routine person. I don't do writing routines at all.
Danni, do you have an answer to that question?
Well, I just was like in charge of, put together and ran the Kentucky State Poetry Society conference this past weekend. So I feel like I'm still like worn out from that, but it was also very like rejuvenating to like hear all these readings and then also go to generative workshops. I feel like that is when I'm really stuck. That's like a thing that kind of kicks my butt and makes me do the writing, sit down, like writing with other people or having prompts or having, you know, an audience. I took Barbara Jane's workshop this past summer. Was that this summer? That was right. Yeah. And it was, it was generative, and it was, I mean, I feel like I learned a lot, and I was actually writing for the first time in a long time. So it feels really good to do things like that.
So what I'm hearing is just being in community and reading other people. It's just so important for the writer. And I thank you all for being here. We do have everybody's book except Jen's is still on order. So we'll be hopefully getting that soon, and then hopefully her new book. And of course, you can get those all with your San Francisco Public Library card. And library community, we love you. We appreciate you. And authors, we appreciate you for sharing all of your amazingness with us. And everyone, have a wonderful night, and thank you for joining us. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful to hear all of your voices.
Yeah, I wish I could get you to sign my book, Barbara Jane, but
sometime soon. All right, get some sleep. Oh my gosh,
to get your book signed, let me know. We can set up something at the library.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara Jane.
Good night, everybody. Go to